Somewhere in a nameless mountain range, there's a stream that freezes strange. Not like normal ice, smooth, glassy, almost poured. Locals say if you follow that stream far enough, you'll find the collapsed bones of a hunter's cabin. Nobody goes there. Not hunters, not loggers, not even the dogs. Especially not the dogs. Because 6 years before this story begins, something happened in that hollow that a mother never forgave. And mothers, as it turns out, don't need to be human to come back. This is the story of 2 escaped convicts who spent one night too many in that forest, and the one confession that should have stayed buried. The story of the killings had traveled through the region for years, twisting a little more with every telling, until it stopped being a memory and became a legend. People who lived near the spruce forest avoided it entirely. They wouldn't build there. They wouldn't hunt there. Some wouldn't even say its name after dark. For Owen, half dead from 3 days of forcing his way through frozen brush, that superstition was a serious problem. He'd always believed a loaded carbine could make any stranger cooperative, but a carbine doesn't scare off a legend. He and Garrick had been running for 3 days, sleeping in thorn thickets, jumping at every distant bark of a hunting dog. No food, no fire, just cold and the sound of grouse bursting out of the dead grass, birds they were too afraid to shoot, because a gunshot might as well be a flare. When they reached the ridge, Garrick went quiet. Not tired quiet, wrong quiet. He stopped needling Owen about his clumsy footing, and that silence was worse than any insult. "I don't want to stay in this damn place 1 minute longer," Garrick muttered, eyes down. So they kept climbing, silent, careful. Moss slick stones underfoot, a weak rust-colored sunset bleeding through the firs. At the top of the pass, they dropped onto a rotten log wedged in the scree, a dense blue-black forest pressing in around them on every side. For the first time in days, there was distance between them and the men hunting them. Owen almost let himself breathe. "I'm going down for water," he said. "I'm coming, quickly." Garrick was already on his feet, and there was a dark, damp patch on the moss where he'd been sitting, not from the melt. Owen felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. In Garrick's voice, there was something he'd never heard from the man before. Fear. "Plenty of animals out here," Garrick said. "Too fast. Too much like an excuse. And we've only got the one carbine." They picked their way down into the hollow. Owen cracked the stream ice with his boot heel, splashed his face, scraped at his beard. "This filth is going to kill my teeth," Garrick muttered beside him, the carbine slung across his back, dipping into the current like it was drinking. That's when Owen looked past him, downstream, where the water curved around a rust-streaked boulder, and saw it. The bones of a cabin, half swallowed by moss, barely visible in the mist. "Look," Owen said. "We can sleep there tonight." Garrick straightened, looked, and flinched like he'd been struck. His face folded into something close to disgust. A drop of water hung under his lip, soaking slowly into his beard. "No, we're not going there." "Why not? There might be a stove in there." "You know exactly why." Garrick still hadn't looked away from the cabin. "The smoke would give us up. Fog sits higher than smoke in this valley." He gave a rough shudder, like a wet dog, and then, in a voice flattened by 6 years of trying not to think about it, he said the sentence that would ruin what was left of that night. "This is the place where we killed the man and his dogs." Owen stared at him. "So it's true?" "Yes." "You did it?" "Me, Fox, Joe Pollock, and Snout. 6 years ago. My first run." Garrick told it in a flat, dead voice, like the memory had never actually left him, like he'd just been carrying it, silently, every day since. We had come down at dusk and found the cabin lit. A skinny yard dog rushed us at the stream crossing, and Snout broke its neck without breaking stride. That's when the hunter came out. The man understood instantly what 4 armed strangers meant. He didn't fight. He cooked for them, brought up spirits from the cellar, handed over his shotgun and 3 boxes of shells without a word of argument. We ate, we drank, though Garrick swore they hadn't much. And the hunter kept fussing, kept going down to the cellar again and again. Meat, mushrooms, more liquor. At first, it seemed like hospitality. Then it started to feel like something else. Near nightfall, the hunter tried to drag a heavy sheepskin coat down into the cellar himself, and Snout grabbed him by the collar. "What are you hiding down there?" The man swore there was nothing. Nothing but shadows, nothing to see. Snout hit him once in the stomach to test that answer. Hit him again, harder when he didn't like it. And from the darkness of the cellar came a sound that wasn't a shadow at all. A whimper, high and frightened and unmistakably alive. "What are you hiding?" The man broke. His face went the color of old paper. "My dog," he said. "She just had a litter, 4 pups. She's protective, that's all. She's just protective." Someone grabbed a kerosene lamp and leaned it over the cellar opening. And there she was. A lean, starred hunting dog, pressed into the corner behind a stack of crates, her 4 newborn pups shoved behind her haunches, out of the light. She wasn't cowering. She was guarding. Ears flat, lips peeled back off her teeth, a low, continuous growl rolling out of her chest like distant thunder. "She won't hurt anyone if you don't corner her," the hunter said, voice shaking. "Please, she's just protecting her babies." For a moment, Garrick swore this part was true. It actually seemed like it might end there. Pollock told the hunter to bring the litter up where it was warm. The man's face cracked with something like relief. The look, Garrick said, of a drowning man finally offered a hand. He reached down toward the crate. The mother dog let him. She trusted him. She did not trust Snout. The moment the hunter lifted the first pup, Snout leaned into the cellar mouth with that same fake gentle voice he used right before he hurt something. "That's it. Good girl. Nobody's going to hurt your babies." The growl behind him went from a warning to a promise. Snout lunged for a second pup anyway, snatched it straight out from under her. She hit him mid-motion. All 50 pounds of her came off the ground in a single line and closed on his forearm, and Snout screamed and staggered backward into the cellar stairs, and in the chaos, the lamp went over. Glass. Darkness. A man's boot slipping on spilled oil. When Fox got the second lamp lit, 3 things were true. The mother dog was gone into a crack in the cellar wall with her surviving pups dragged along in her jaws 2 at a time. Snout's arm was open to the bone, and the hunter had picked up a fire log and swung it into the back of Snout's skull with everything he had. It didn't put Snout down for long. Nothing ever seemed to. They found the gap in the cellar wall, a natural fissure, cold air pouring out of it like a throat exhaling. A rope ran into the dark, tied off to a hook. The hunter used it to lower meat into the cold to keep it from spoiling. It went down a long way. Snout wrapped his bleeding arm and dragged the rope up anyway. Nothing on the end but a butchered deer haunch. "She's in there," he said, and Garrick remembered exactly what came over his face. Not anger anymore. Something patient, something that enjoyed itself. "If the bitch wants to hide her litter in a hole," Snout said, "let's give her a reason to stay in it." They dragged the hunter to the edge. He didn't fight much after that. Garrick said his legs had already given out, like his body understood before his mind did. Snout leaned in, mock soft, calling into the dark like he was calling the dog to dinner. And a heartbeat before the knife went into the hunter's stomach. The man twisted his head toward the fissure and said the only thing he had left to give her. "Stay hidden. Stay hidden, girl." Snout made sure it wasn't quick. Then he pushed the body in after the words. It fell past the ledge where the dog and her last pup were pressed into the dark, and the sound that came back up, A heavy final thud, followed by absolute silence, was the sound 4 grown men would carry for the rest of their lives, however long that turned out to be. "Cover it," Snout ordered. They stacked 2 rows of barrels over the opening and never went back down. They didn't sleep that night. In the morning, they left. Later, in a ravine 3 valleys over, Fox took a bullet in the leg and got left behind. And out of spite, he was the one who told the story that eventually reached every fireside in the region. Snout split from the group not long after. Nobody asked him back. "Well," Owen said when Garrick finally stopped talking. He was shaking, and it wasn't only the cold. "I don't know what to say to that." "Let's move higher," Garrick said abruptly. "I don't want to sleep in the fog." But Owen, exhausted, furious in a way he didn't fully understand, looked at the black outline of the cabin and said the thing he shouldn't have. "To hell with that. We're sleeping in there. What am I supposed to be afraid of? Ghosts? Somebody's conscience?" He regretted it instantly, but he also could not stand the idea of camping beside that sealed, silent grave 1 more hour than he had to. The cabin was mostly standing, moss hanging off it in wet ropes. The door collapsed flat across the threshold. Garrick found the old kerosene lamp buried in the rotten floorboards. The same lamp, Owen realized with a lurch in his stomach. The same light a man had died by. The same light a mother dog had watched go out over her babies. They got the stove lit, blocked the window, sat with their backs to the warm bricks while the floor kept breathing cold up at them, like the whole building was exhaling. "There was a strong draft coming from that hole," Owen said, mostly to fill the silence. Garrick didn't answer. He sat wrapped in his coat, eyes fixed on nothing, looking less like a man resting and more like a man serving a sentence. "Is somebody waiting for you somewhere?" Owen tried. "I'm getting firewood," Garrick said instead, and stepped out into the dark. 3 seconds later, the crack of rotten wood swallowed his scream. "The cellar!" Owen grabbed the lamp and found him waist-deep in a hole that hadn't been there a minute ago, clawing at swollen, rotten boards, sinking a little further with every panicked movement. "Don't move," Owen's voice came out steadier than he felt. "You'll go all the way through. Hold still." Garrick's face was a mask of strain, sweat cutting through the grime. "Don't you dare leave me," he screamed when Owen so much as shifted his weight. "I'll kill you, I swear it." Owen threw himself flat and hauled him under the arms, the floor tilting like a ship's deck, Garrick's nails tearing into his back. "I've got you. There's a beam somewhere. Get onto the beam." "He grabbed me. He's pulling me down." "Hold still." And then something did grab him. 2 thin, pale, impossibly strong shapes closed around Garrick's ankle from below. One large, one small, working together like they'd rehearsed it 1,000 times in the dark. And both men went down into the hole in a collapse of boards and dust and spilled kerosene, the lamp going out mid-fall by some miracle Owen would never be able to explain. Owen hit stone. Pain exploded white behind his eyes. When his vision cleared, Garrick was still screaming, swinging a broken board at something he could barely see. And then the screaming turned into something worse. Wet. Final. The sound of a stream freezing over mid-scream. "Get up," something ancient in the back of Owen's skull told him. "Now." He forced himself upright. A shape, pale, wrong, hairless, with joints that bent in places joints shouldn't bend, was crouched over what was left of Garrick, its long, ruined limbs working with a horrible, patient rhythm. Something small moved beside it in the dark, smaller shapes, 4 of them, low to the ground, circling. It wasn't the mother dog anymore. Not really. Not after 6 years sealed in frozen stone, with nothing to eat and nothing to become, except this. It heard and breathed, and it turned its head with a wet crunching sound, and behind it, 4 smaller, pale shapes turned too. Owen grabbed the nearest sharp object he could find, a broken length of wood with a jagged point, and shoved himself backward into the wall as the mother thing came for him low and fast, moving in a rolling, wave-like gait, no longer bothering to look anything like a dog or anything at all. His hand found his matchbox, crushed nearly flat, most of the matches spilled into the black. One left, wedged into the lid. His fingers were too numb to feel it. He had to hook it out by feel alone while something cold and limp brushed against his leg in the dark. The match caught on the second strike. He threw it straight into the spilled kerosene at the creature's feet. Fire raced up the pale, twisted limbs, and in the light, just for a second, Owen saw the mouth. Rows of small, glassy, crystalline teeth. Not a dog's teeth. Not anymore.
It came at him anyway, burning, silent, and slammed him backward across the stone. And together, they went sliding and tumbling into the dark, while four small, pale shapes shrieked somewhere close behind, a sound too high, too raw, to belong to any living puppy.
Above them, the fire caught the fog-soaked cabin in seconds and roared upward, sparks dying in the black air before they ever reached the bottom of the well. The burning creature twitched and blackened on the floor beside him, smoke rising off its ruined back in patches, like paper curling into ash. The well widened downward. In a side hollow, Owen found a skeleton, ragged prison clothes still clinging to it, an old double-barreled shotgun rusted into its ribcage like something grown there. Snout. It had to be Snout. The others said he'd simply left the group. Nobody had asked where. Owen pried the gun roost. Empty. Under the stock, a thin viper lay coiled, undisturbed by the fire until now when it flinched and went still again. He wrapped rags around the barrels, lit them in the dying flame, and crawled forward with his torch, deeper into the passage, digging with bleeding fingers through frozen clay and broken stone, dragging his ruined leg behind him. Something dry and papery brushed his hand. Just a dead leaf, he told himself, forcing himself not to think about anything softer that could have brushed him instead. The torch guttered out just before something coiled around his neck. Another snake. He kept moving. He had to keep moving. The tunnel angled upward. He clawed the last stretch of loose earth away like a man being born, and then wet stone gave way to open air, and Owen spilled out down a rock slope into a waterfall-fed stream, screaming from pain and cold and something close to joy. The water hit him like fire. He surfaced, gasping, the current dragging him toward a still black lake at the base of the cleft, ice already lacing the rocks in delicate white veins. The first cramp seized his ruined leg as dawn broke. The clouds overhead scratched red and raw like something had clawed them open. That's when he saw the crack in the rock face 2 meters above the waterline. Thin, pale shapes were forcing their way out of it. Small, impossibly small, squeezing between stones that shouldn't have let anything through. Not children. Puppies. Wrapped in something that wasn't fur anymore, eyes huge and black and depthless, watching him with the calm, terrible patience of something that has already waited 6 years and can wait a little longer. The pain in Owen's leg was gone now. So was the blood. A thin skin of ice was already forming across his chest, slow and careful, like it was being tucked in. Above him, one final shape worked its way free of the crack and dropped lower, bracing on limbs too long and too many, moving the way a spider moves down a wall. It rested its chin in its hands, and it watched him. And it waited for him to stop moving. Locals still say you can hear it on quiet nights near that stream. Not a woman's cry, not a child's. Something lower, something that starts like a growl and ends like grief. They say a mother never really leaves the place where her children died. They just start guarding it differently.